So we are going to get started. My name is Helen Weber. I am the Director of Nonprofit Services at HW&Co, and I welcome you to our virtual nonprofit guide to success. And our last but not least, in any way the least, is Carrie Schmidt. Carrie began her career in public policy as a legislative director in the House of Representatives. Since then, she has built on that experience to bring nonprofits her expertise and insights, helping many nonprofit organizations develop and implement strategic plans to engage and mobilize supporters. And with that, I will hand it over to Carrie.
All right, hi. Let me get this up here. Okay, live. Hello, hello. All right, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to do this. It's fun to be together, and whatever together means these days, but I'm happy to be connecting with people every day that there's an opportunity to, and really I'm excited to talk about this topic. So here we are, 2 o'clock. You've been webinaring for 5 hours now, so I'm guessing you have lots of notes, you have lots of ideas, you probably have lots you need to do yet today, and so I figure with this topic, let's just have fun with it. Let's keep it kind of light. Let's keep it really brainstormy, and make sure that what we're keeping our pulse on is what strategies and plans and building those out. And love doing that. Think you should. Happy to talk about that anytime. But I think what we really want to give you is some thoughts about what you can implement as we go into these next few months, as we go into the top of next year, that can get some wheels turning. So that's our focus. We're going to start off right away with a couple of our polling questions, because it'll be interesting to just get a sense of things from your perspective. So our first, how many of you changed your fundraising strategies after March? By a lot? By a little? You can tell us how much here. Made big changes, made small changes, made no changes, just taking it day by day, so not really following a strategy, or what's a fundraising strategy? What fundraising strategy? It's okay if that's your answer.
Okay, the results, it looks like the majority have made changes. 40% made big changes, 25% made small, 16% made no changes, 12% just taking it day by day, and we have 7 that said, what's a fundraising strategy?
All right, good.
They're in the right place. They're in the right place.
Right, we can work with all that, no problem. That's good. Yeah, I would expect for, depends on what your strategy was, right? So if your strategy was something that was really event dependent, gathering dependent, you're changing things up quite a bit immediately. If you had a lot of acquisition to do, the way we acquire right now is different. The way we engage is different, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Okay, good. That's good to have a sense of that. So after switching your strategy, for those who did, and those who have one, who became your most important fundraising audience? And even absent a strategy, who do you consider to be your most important fundraising audience today? Individual donors, institutional donors, recently lapsed, so last 2 years, prospects, full house list.
Okay, 43% said individual donors, 18% is in institutional donors, 1% is recently lapsed, 9% are going with prospects, and 29% is a full house list.
Yeah, great, and that's good to get a sense, and that's probably a good distribution to work with for today too. I mean, we're thinking a lot right now about our current donors, right? About how we get through this turmoil, these rocky times with those who are behind us, and that's a lot of what we want to talk about with individuals, certainly with prospects, certainly with institutional as well, and then communicating to that full house list, because that's important. Keep in touch with them. All right, so we'll go ahead and move through this a little bit. So challenging times, we've got here crisis, crashes, economic crashes, some literal crashes. How do nonprofits continue to move ahead and deliver on their mission? Donors who are engaged, right? Donors who can answer the call for us when we need them. Donors who are willing to stay with us, to keep supporting us. And it's not even just about us. It's because they care about that mission and that work so much that they will stay the course with us. So how do we build engagement? How do we keep them engaged and keep them with us as we walk through this time? Well, we invest in our donors and they will invest in us. It's like any good relationship. You put into the relationship and you will get out of the relationship. And so that's what we want to think about. And really, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. And I think we acknowledge that because relationships, they take time and they take effort and they take thought and consideration. So where is this coming from? Just give you a little bit of sense of Plentiful and our point of view and how we got to talking about this topic that we love so much is that my business partner and I have a real strong commitment to sort of what we consider two sides of the coin here. Strategic marketing principles respectfully and appropriately applied to the nonprofit space and blend those with nonprofit development best practices. And there you have the opportunity to realize, true relationships. Because at the end of the day, it is all about relationships. It's the art and science of connecting people with the organization to deliver on a mission. And so we explore this topic all day long and we think about it all day long because that's how we advance a mission, is getting that momentum, that support behind that mission and seeing it go forward and stay strong. So why are we talking about current donors? Well, first and foremost, we always want to keep the pulse on current donors. We always want to focus on retention. It was true in February as much as it's true today, if it's not more true today. Recruiting and acquiring donors, while always important to keep your pipeline full, is expensive. It costs about 2 to 3 times more to acquire that donor than the amount of the first donation. So on average, a donor relationship doesn't typically become profitable, if you think of it that way, until about 18 or 24 months after a donor has given their support and continued with an organization. So while acquisition is always important, you need those retained donors to stay with you to keep the engine running in the meantime. Current donors have become even more critical now. The opportunities to acquire donors became challenging and limited. We had to get much more creative about acquisition and we'll continue to need to stay creative about acquisition. Whereas connecting with current donors or recently lapsed donors is really important. It's imperative to keeping forward and keeping that momentum going. So we're going to focus on them. Not to mention, of course, that current donors can help be a really important channel and tool to finding new donors as well. So we don't want to overlook that aspect of it. So what is donor engagement? We talk about it a lot. Engagement is a word I think that sometimes has a bit of a buzz factor to it. I think the most important way to think of it is that the realization of a mutually beneficial, mutually meaningful relationship with a donor, right? So that you always want to make sure that there's that balance and that harmony between you and your donors. There's a reason that they're showing up to give and then will continue to show up. And there's obviously a reason you value them showing up and continuing to support the organization. So if we think of this on a journey, if we think of this sort of on a continuum of a relationship, first a donor will have awareness of an organization. And then perhaps they'll express their interest either with an initial gift, attending an event, a virtual event, signing up for a newsletter, something that really indicates they'd like to learn more. They might make then that first contribution, that first gift or donation. And then you really have the opportunity to stitch them in, right? To bring them in, to help explore the fact that they've expressed that interest and they would like to become more involved, therefore more engaged. The more engaged a donor becomes, in all aspects of an organization, obviously the more they'll continue to invest because they are, it has become priority for them at this point. And so that investment engagement loop continues, and of course the result is the ongoing loyalty. So that's how we think about engagement. It's certainly the act of investment, and it's certainly the ongoing act of staying really really involved with head and heart with the organization. So we'll stop here just for a second and ask our third polling question. Primary way you stay connected with your donors today: emails, letters, calls, social media, video conferencing. We just learned about a bunch of great platforms to do so. What are the ways you really stay connected with your donors right now?
Okay, email is the most popular with 38%. 24% use social media, 17% letters, 14% calls, and 7% video conferencing.
Perfect. What I love about that is the distribution across those channels. We're going to talk about that, but having that, having that good mix is awesome to see. All right. So let's get a little bit of thinking here about why donors give. Right, Network for Good surveyed 3,000 donors, talked about the inspiration for giving. We've seen a couple of other studies that do something similar. They have kind of similar results. But this is a good, clean list. 8 reasons for donating, for making a donation. 1, I know there is a need for the nonprofit's mission in my community, and I know it does good work. High confidence, high value. And these are in descending order of response. 2, I believe the nonprofit will use my gift to stabilize or expand programming. So there is a good sense that this is being used to continue to do the work or continue expanding the work. 3, the nonprofit communicates about the impact of giving by sharing program outcomes. I understand what my contribution, what my support, what my money is going towards. 4, I know someone who benefited from the nonprofit's work. I have a personal connection to the work, and in this case, I really specifically know how that benefited an individual or a person. 5, I want to be associated with the organization and its brand. And that's really interesting, to have that sense of affiliation and to be proud of that affiliation. And we'll talk about that a little more. 6, I see the organization online and on social media. There's presence. 7, I want the tax deduction. 8, I know someone on the board of directors or who volunteers. So again, I have a personal connection. This time, instead of the beneficiary, it's with someone else who's involved. So let's just kind of.
Hi, Carrie.
Yes.
Your slides are not advancing.
Uh-oh, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know. So if you can fix it, great. Otherwise, people might have to make sure they download the PDF and follow along, play along at home, as they say.
It says I'm showing my screen. I'm sorry, everybody. Let me look. Let me see.
We just see the cover slide. Oh, there it comes. I think we're good.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, here are the 8 reasons. You missed my really pretty circle graphs. I'm just going to show you that real fast. Engagement, investment, breed loyalty. Sorry that everyone missed out on this. Okay, and there you go. Now you can see the 8 reasons for giving, I hope.
Yeah, we can see now.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if we strike out tax deduction, then 7 of these are the result of being informed, inspired, included in the work, and in other words, engaged with the organization. And this is relevant for institutional donors as well. So how do we build donor engagement? We put together 25 ideas and strategies that can be applied immediately And we broke them into 5 categories. So let me just make a couple notes about these. The spirit of this is intended to spark ideas. It's certainly not a checklist. So I would never imagine someone would sit down and make sure they're doing all 25 of these things. If you can, brilliant, please let me know. But at the same time, I think what we really want to see is that this gives you a sense of a few things you could integrate into your model, into your program, your communication development program, in the short term that can help spark that engagement that we're looking for. On that note, you know, my business partner says all the time, and she says it really eloquently, that a good strategy, well executed, will win the day, right? Do a few things really, really well, really consistently, set that expectation with your donors, and ensure that then they know what kind of content you're sharing, information you're sharing, inspiration you're going to share, and they'll look for it. So that helps increase how much they're consuming it, that they're opening it, and being involved in it. So you want to do a few things really, really well. And then as you know, as two people who care deeply about brand and its role in nonprofit, do what's on brand, to use that term, for your organization. You know, you should think of your relationship as an extension of your brand experience, which is an extension of how your organization functions in all aspects. And so the relationship you cultivate with the donors should mirror that as well. There are going to be things that are that are really right for your organization, and things that maybe don't fit. Don't try to make something fit if it doesn't. Instead, just really focus on the things that make sense. So with that, our handout lists all 25 of these if you want to follow along, or hopefully my slides keep advancing. And we'll just hit through them and think through how that, you know, hopefully it sparks some ideas and how this might work for you and keep your donors with you, especially as we go into these next few months and whatever happens next year. So communications, absolutely, communications and engagement hand in hand. We want to always make sure not only that we're communicating, but we're communicating well, and number one, we're communicating often. Stay present, stay relevant, right? Earn a reputation for quality content so that when someone receives your email, you know you have them, you get them, you know what emails you get in your inbox that you're like, oh, I'm definitely going to read that, because there'll be something of value, something of interest every time it rises to the top of your priority and helps break through all that clutter we know people are experiencing. Same with social media, same with letters in the mailbox. Don't lapse, even though we know it's kind of a hairy time, there's a lot of competition for attention right now. Stay on it, you know, keep communicating, because certainly if you're doing work, you have something to say. And make sure you're connecting it to what is happening in your world, in the donor's world, and obviously the world around us. Content's difficult. So it's one thing to say keep communicating, it's another to say keep communicating well. It can be tough sometimes to come up with ways to keep that fresh. One way to do that, leverage leadership voices. There's a lot of leadership voices you can tap into within your organization, whether it's other people, other staff who can share a point of view about an aspect of the work that the program that's going on, certainly your board, maybe it's partners that you work with, third-party experts. There's a number of other voices that you could tap into, let them tell a story, let them tell perspective, and then that just expands the suite of what you can share from a content perspective. Give information, offer inspiration. We always want to strike a careful balance between statistics and stories. I think of it a lot of times, the tangible, the intangible, the head and the heart. There's a bunch of ways to say that. Effectively, what we really want to do is find kind of a sweet spot in our communications where we're illustrating our work in a very compelling and thoughtful way, and also in a heartfelt way. The right balance of this, I think, differs by organization. Again, this kind of goes back to what is the nature of your work, your organization, your relationship to your donors. But think about it when there's times to inform and when there's times to really just inspire, and how the two come together. Share both challenges and successes. Part of communicating continuously and openly is to be also honest about things that are difficult, about new wrinkles we didn't expect. When you do that, be prepared to follow up, So for example, if your model requires that people need transportation to get to the service, and transportation has become disrupted or difficult to come by, that's the problem you're working to solve. Let your donors know you're actively working on solving wrinkles that weren't expected and actively adapting. And then when you do, share it. That helps keep them aware, in which we saw in our list as being important, of how you're meeting the needs. Reinforce the organization's distinctiveness. Have a voice that's yours, have a culture that's yours, and let that shine through donor communications as well. Again, this will be something that, in the absence of having a personal conversation or gathering in person, you want to make sure your communications are working just as hard to express your personality, your tone, your culture as well. This is very well achieved in social media. It's also certainly something the writing can accomplish in email and in mail letters, but social media gives you a lot of opportunities to show some of that as well. All right, so those are sort of high arching themes on the communication front. Let's talk through specifically donor outreach, and also prospective donor outreach, and how we want to connect with this audience. Create opportunities for donors to give feedbacks. We live in a time where, as consumers, we have the ability to make our thoughts, opinions, perspectives, experiences known all the time. So as a donor, give them the same opportunity. That can be done formally. Maybe consider a survey for next year. It's a great time to take a temperature reading or a benchmark on your donor list. So maybe a formal survey, maybe it's right time for a formal survey. It can be done very informally. Put a poll out there. Ask people to comment, ask people to respond to you. Just make sure that you're keeping a dialogue open. Communication, sometimes I think we can all get in the habit of just push, push, push. Don't forget to pull a little bit too, and that helps keeps the conversation going. Give donors opportunities to interact with each other. Especially earlier this year, I think we're all craving a little more interaction and connectivity. That probably will continue, and especially when we connect with people that share a passion like we do. Maybe this is done simply through Facebook groups, or social provides us a lot of opportunities to connect people. This can be done through mini briefings, discussion groups, a lunch and learn virtual, obviously all of these, but create moments when not only do we get to, where we communicating with donors, but donors can also learn from each other's experiences. Let donors customize their own experience as well. Give them options. Perhaps you have various newsletters and topics that you could cover, and you can do a deep dive on something. Give donors an opportunity to opt in. The great thing about that is they're signing on to something that they value, and you're learning that they value it. So the more you can provide moments for donors to shape what their relationship is with you, the more that it's going to continue to be something that's really personal and important to them. Mobilize donors for the cause. Sometimes when you care a lot about something, you'll support it, and then you want to give it some energy too. There can be lots of ways you can suggest for donors to take action that can support your organization. It could be put a sign out. It could be talk to their friends about something and equip them with talking points to be able to do so. It could be read a book and provide some resources for them to learn more. It could be stepping into the advocacy world and asking for some action to be taken. They can be small things, they can be big things, they can be really well organized, they can be totally opt-in, personal, on your own time, either way. But if you give some windows of opportunity for donors to take some action, or even know they could have taken action even if they didn't choose to that time, it helps give them a chance to interact. And then lastly, with donors, those who have invested, those who have given, celebrate the wins with them. Celebrate a milestone, celebrate an accomplishment. Let them be a part of the success that their investment has made possible, and really feel that joy, feel that, that accomplishment was was for them too, right? And again, that goes back to those 8 reasons for donating. We know that that confidence that my donation made a difference is a driver. So that's really specific to all donor outreach. Let's talk about solicitation for a second, or longer. We probably just, this one probably could have 25 points on its own. But if we think about the solicit and the ask, and I know we're coming up on end of year, so a lot of people are probably thinking about appeals. I should have made this a polling question. If you've heard it before, you know. If you haven't, we'll just refresh, and we'll just refresh. If you haven't, let's just cover it again. How many times a year can you ask a donor? Studies show pretty frequently, studies show that somewhere between the 20 and 24 range, absolutely sure. Some even go up to 36, maybe even 40 times a year that you can directly ask a donor before you get into the aggravation or disengage zones. Think it sounds like a lot. It's often way more than organizations are asking, but if you break it down, it's 2 or 3 times a month. And so and those are direct asks. Even when things get tough, it's similar to the way we talked about communications. Even when things are tough, even when things are chaotic, and you're still figuring things out, you want to not lapse on asking. You want to keep giving your donors opportunities to show their support and make sure they know that they're valued by continuing to keep that door open. So keep asking, keep continuing to ask. Don't pause on that. It's not the time for it. So how about soliciting? How do we continue to solicit? Well, change up the narrative. As you go through the year, and if we're going to make 24 appeals a year, we need to keep that fresh. So think about your year in chapters or in campaigns. Sometimes we can't predict what the year is going to bring, right? So sometimes the campaign's in response to something that's happening real time, a challenge we didn't expect, an event we didn't expect. Sometimes you should have a general plan for the year of what you might talk about, but think about it in incremental steps, in little campaigns, and it's totally okay. You're going back to your donors again and asking them again. They'll choose when they want to engage. You never know when that moment might be. And where do you come up with these campaigns? Well, you're going to have generally one primary case for support for your mission. Think if there's components of that you can identify. Maybe it's about a specific program. Maybe it's about a specific audience. Those can inform what these campaigns are. But that'll help pace you through the year, give you reasons to continue to ask. Mix up the media. You might have a really active social fundraising campaign at one point in the year. You might have a really active mail-based campaign another part of the year. This is how events get into the mix. Think of the year as a flow, right? And so how you use your media, how you use your campaigns will help you continue to give those engagement moments, and that's what we're going for. In terms of things you can apply right now, if you've been doing a lot of email, like some of you have, maybe it's the time to switch to letters. If you've done a lot of social, a few phone calls might really be welcome at this point. So just think about mixing it up. Offer many opportunities to give. So in this case, if you're going through the campaigns, but at the same time you also want to be, and you're going through your appeals, you want to think about also opening up different doors for how they can enter your organization or opportunities to join in at this moment and give again. And we want to keep making sure that there's a new and fresh reason to do so. At the same way, offer many programs to give or ways to give. If I gave to what's probably your general fund or annual fund last time, maybe I'll give to a specific program fund next time. Mix that up as well. So again, you're just really, this is kind of when you channel the way a retailer always gives you a new reason to go back in the store. You're kind of doing the same thing here. You're always keeping your donors involved and active and give them many reasons to stay engaged with you and many reasons to support you. So the solicitation should be frequent, consistent, constant, and fresh each time. Specific to major donors, of course, these are this is where if you're really, really strapped on and everyone has bandwidth and resources, if you have to double down and really make some hard decisions on where you're going to throw your energy, major donors, retaining and recapturing major donors is really where you want to put a lot of energy. That's usually, for most models, that's usually really, really important to do. And so with major donors, we want to call it a few very specific things. These are obviously bigger gifts, bigger engagements, bigger contributions or grants. And so we want to think of them a little bit differently. Offer ways for major donors to be involved in the mission work. This can be hands-on. This can be, again, just more about learning about the work. Think about ways that as an advocate, as a contributor, as a volunteer, even a virtual volunteer, your major donors have opportunities to really stay in the know and stay in the work. Demonstrate the value of the gift. You want to always make sure that we're celebrating major gifts, that we're illustrating the impact and the return on the investment, of course, and that giving and continuing to give supports the organization and achieves the mission. So we want to make sure we're taking time to demonstrate how giving matters, and especially to major donors. Treat them like a friend. Be personal about it. Major donors are a really core group of supporters, people, even if they're institutions, there's people. So pick up the phone and give them a call. Form a committee if there's something that you really want to tackle and invite them to be a part of it. You might have a very specific poll or survey or feedback loop that you provide just to major donors, or just check in on them. Right? We've all had a lot going on this year. So maybe just that opportunity with no ask, no content that's really specific to solicitation. You're simply just checking in on some of these relationships. So don't forget to take time to do that and do that investment. Of course, thank you, thank you, thank you. We never want to miss the opportunity to provide an authentic, heartfelt, personalized thank you, especially for major donors. And think about, in this case, what would be really valuable to that donor. What would they like to see? Who would they like to hear from? The more you know about a donor, the more you can make sure that you're doing something that's really validating to them that they are in the right place. And lastly, enable them to represent the organization. Remember that pride of affiliation motivator that we heard from the list? This is really true with major donors. They're making a significant gift. They're continuing to be a supporter, and most likely they're really proud of that affiliation and would love to be a voice for the organization. So give them the ability to do so. That can be providing them with talking points and resources. That can be provide them with tools so that if they want to post something, they're using the right logo on social media, they're using the right logo, they're using the right information, they're providing the right links. You can provide toolkits that give them the ability to represent the organization. Don't overlook the power of a really good car magnet once in a while. All right, our last category, board and committees. These are volunteers who are already signaling their investment. They want to be invested in, to invest in the organization. And of course, they have a responsibility and a duty to the organization to ensure that the organization is strong. So keep them close to the work. Keep them close to what is happening. Communicate maybe even more, especially in times when things aren't normal. Remember that your board and your committees are both an audience and a channel. So they're both the opportunity to cultivate them and communicate to them as one of your primary audiences. And they also are that power of testimony, right? That other T. They are also the ones who can be out there spreading the word about what's happening at the organization, their channel. So we want to really be careful and considered about what it is that we, how often we share and communicate with them and how we empower them as well. So keep them in the work, keep them closer so that they never feel like they don't know what's going on or how something is being impacted. To the same point as before, maybe even more, make it easy for them to represent the organization and maybe even give them some direction on what you would like to see them do, where we need some new inroads right now. Again, as we mentioned before, acquisition's tough right now. Developing new relationships kind of difficult right now. This is where your board can help you do so. Profile the board members as donors. Recognize them and give them an opportunity to share their story and make their voice heard and inspire others who are going to give. Equip them to peer fundraise. Ask them to create virtual house parties, give to a specific goal, contribute to a specific goal, as well as help raise for a specific goal. Ask them to really be involved in the peer fundraising effort. And that can be a subcomponent of those mini campaigns that we talked about earlier. For this very moment in time, it can be how to support any end of year efforts that you're currently planning. And give, again, the more specific the expectation, the more specifically they can deliver on them. And then lastly, ask them to give. Again, these should be your major supporters, your primary supporters, and you know, don't let them off the hook. Make sure that they're giving and that they really are, that your organization really is one of those top priorities for them as well. So that was our quick tour. 25 things that could help you boost engagement right away. And if you take 2 or 3 of them and give them a good go, you know, that might give you a new muscle to flex in terms of being able to elevate that engagement or something fresh to even do with this really, really important audience to ensure they keep walking with you as we walk through these times, right? And the reality is, if you get good at this now, you'll be great at it later, when it's perhaps less complicated, less chaotic, less challenging. You'll have, you know, perhaps more resources, more staff, right? If we can figure this out now at a time when we're stressed and build some of this into our program, the potential for it to always pay dividends is pretty significant. So with that, I'm going to stop and just ask my last polling question. Which category might you explore first? This is me. See, I'm demonstrating it right now. I'm asking you for feedback on what you think might be helpful here.
All right, the results are in. Looks like most people are communications and donor outreach. 28% said communications, 30% donor outreach, 23% board and committees, major donors 13%, and solicit was a slim 7%.
Great. I'll assume all of those are just to warm up to that solicitation that you intend to do. Just a bit. All right, perfect. Well, that was our tour through some ideas to boost board engagement. Again, so happy to be here, and we have a little time. I'd be happy to answer any questions and discuss anything.
Okay, I do know that I have one. I know for sure there's one question. Let me just pull it up here. It goes back to, you know, the how many times do you ask? And it says, how many of the 24 plus asks does the donor respond with a donation?
Great, that's a great question. So that, I think that varies a lot by the type of the organization and the type of the ask, right? But it is not, it's not unusual to see about 2 to 3 positive responses in that time frame from your donors. Oftentimes donors will make one significant, especially a major donor, individual donors will make one significant gift, and then a few other supporting gifts throughout the year, especially when they're tied to an event, a campaign, a special cause. So it's worth the effort, in other words. That's a good question.
Okay, and What is a good open rate for like a MailChimp type of solicitation to existing donors?
So also I'd say that depends on your so the cheap way to answer that question is better than whatever your last open rate was. Like you always want to continuing improvement, right? I would say so, but in seriousness, certainly you want to use your history. If you're brand new to a cadence of emails and you're just working with a kind of unproven list, and you get into that 15–20% range, I'd say that that's a great building place. If it's a really cultivated list, and you've been in a pretty strong cadence of emailing, and the more targeted it is, so you've segmented and you're hitting a specific audience with specific information, then ideally you'd love to see it closer to the 40s and 50s. So I think in somewhat it depends what your email campaign, quote unquote, is, but that should give you some guidelines. But really the big thing there is track it all, track everything, track as much as you can so that you can continually check, and make notes about what was opened and what wasn't.
Right, and I think those may be the two questions. That might be all the questions. I don't think I see. I'm waiting if anything else pops up. So if we have no other questions, this will conclude our day. Thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing your time with us.
Great, thank you.
It was great information.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. My email's on the screen. I love to talk about this stuff. I love to learn from other organizations about what's working for you too. So be in touch. That would be great.